Hello, bonjour, aheo, akwaba. Welcome back. You are listening to the Liberated Self podcast, and I am your host, Olivia Atsa. Today, I'm recording this episode from Halifax as I'm visiting a dear friend, and we are having such a lovely weather, no rains, which is huge change of scenery from the weather in Montreal. Although I usually love the rain too, especially when I'm cozy in my bed reading a book or watching a good series. And I don't think I'm the only one who actually enjoys that. And I also know that the rain is good for the gardens, the crops, the nature. I have a garden, so I can understand how I can see things growing when it's really raining outside, and I can appreciate that, especially as we're moving into the summer month. It's just that when it rains a lot, especially when it's not summer yet in Canada, it can get quite cold outside. And my tropical body feels kind of miserable at times. It's not like back home where I used to absolutely love walking under the rain because it always feels refreshing and it's never cold. Anyway, it is sunny and bright outside. I had such a lovely walk along the beach in the morning with my friend and her fur baby, and I loved it. It is actually my first time being in Halifax during this time of year as well. I'm usually around when it's snowing or cold, so it's really good to be experiencing this weather. And it's not the hot, burning sun of the summer weather that I like so much, but it's still quite warm, which is great. Halifax also holds such a special place in my heart because, first of all, there's the ocean, which is not accessible in many provinces in Canada. And if you know me, you know I'm a water, forest, tropical baby. So you can be sure to find me where the ocean is or where there's an abundance of nature more generally. I usually avoid big, crowded cities for the lack of direct access to nature, while I like small towns and cities because they give me that village like vibes and also a slow paced life. I want to know and talk to and interact with my neighbors, if you know what I mean. Secondly, I would say this city has a special place in my heart, mainly because a part of me lives here within the heart of the beautiful community of women I met here a couple of years ago, and whose presence and support has been instrumental to my healing journey. I wouldn't be here without this phenomenal woman, especially one in particular I will introduce shortly. She is one of my absolutely favorite humans on this entire planet. I can't imagine my life without her at this point, and it so happens that she'll be the very first guest on the Liberated Self podcast. What an honor. It is truly, and I mean it is truly such a delight to have her on here because she's one of the main reasons why all this started in the first place. Since we live in different cities, we've consistently talked on the phone almost every day, and our conversations would often last, I would say, like about 2 hours. We talk about absolutely everything you can think of, even the taboo or uncomfortable topics. Sometimes we just call each other because one of us just needs a good cry session or moment and knows the other one would just be there to listen and hold her even if it was to last an hour. There was just a depth of witnessing in our friendship that happened only with her, and I don't think I'd experienced that before. And to me, that was a sign that I could be myself fully with her, no hiding, no pretending. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you would, kind of remember how I talk about how I've been pretending for a long time or for a particular period of my life. So being able to not pretend or hide who I truly was very big for me. I was enough and loved no matter how I showed up, even when I was a complete mess. It was with her, and I would say 2 or 3 other women I'm pretty close with right now that I discovered how healing, deep, honest, and heart-led conversations can be. I remember one time during one of our conversations, we were surprised by the way we were impacting each other's life by simply having open and honest conversations about just anything. We found ourselves processing feelings and emotions that felt intimidating, to do it alone. And more often than not, we ended up coming to our own intuitive answers or conclusions. We never tried to fix each other or tell each other what to do, but rather help each other unravel and uncover our own truth. We knew how to genuinely get curious about the things we were saying to each other, the words we were using, and ask the right questions to challenge certain limiting beliefs or unconscious programming we held for a very long time. I think at one point, if I remember correctly, we jokingly said we should record ourselves and put it out there. And I'm pretty sure we hit it at a podcast together. But at the time, I don't think any of us had the courage to actually start one. We just felt like what we were doing for each other while we processed our inner workings was so profound, and we wish more people could have access to that within their own individual friendships. Also, I should say, we don't always meet or talk to process everything when we talk. We are not like each other's therapists or anything. Everything is not always that heavy. That would be pretty boring, hey? To be honest, it is also impossible, I would say, to always be this serious with her. She's pretty fun and has that childlike energy, so we laugh a lot together and have a lot of fun when we meet since we have similar interests. Anyway, I feel like I've been talking about her for a while now, but I haven't really introduced her or said her name. My bad. I will go ahead and introduce her in my own way, just a little bit, but she will also introduce herself when she joins. So today, I'm super excited to be joined by Victoria Cernjak for this part 2 episode on grief. Victoria is pure magic. She's my friend, my sister, one of my soulmates, the kind of friend you can cry with without having to say a word, the kind of friend you can have deep belly laughters with, and endless intimate conversations, the kind of friend you pour your heart to without hesitation. She has this ability to witness you whole, and through her love, nurture you back to health. In her presence, your heart softens and the masks drop. You never have to be anybody but yourself. With her, I discovered the meaning of a ride or die and a friend who is also a soulmate. I will forever be grateful for the day we met. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we loved getting together and recording this. Hi, Victoria. Welcome.
Hi. It's so hard to accept all of that beautiful stuff that you said. And thank you for saying it. I love you.
I love you too.
And anybody who's listening to this who knows Olivia knows that she is magic, and she is just so full of love and care for everybody. And similarly, she makes people comfortable and also be their truest, fullest, most authentic self. And she also has this real gift of helping people identify what it is that they're saying and helps them put their words together for them, which is a really kind of magical gift as well. So yeah, it is fun to be with Olivia, with you all of the time too. So I'm happy that we're doing this. Kudos to you for starting this because yeah, like you said, we talked about it and that was it. We talked about it a few times, I guess. And here we are having a conversation. So, yeah, maybe there'll be some tears. I'm sure there'll be some laughs. And we'll hold true to the introduction.
Yeah. And as always, tears are always welcome. And as comfortable as you are, of course, with sharing stuff. I'm very much looking forward to us having this conversation. And thank you for all the beautiful words that you said about me, too. I appreciate you. And I think I'm going to first of all ask you, because we ask each other that question often, how is your heart today? Because I also want us to talk a little bit about how we met each other. I think that would be nice. And also I'll give you a bit of the floor for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit about who you are. I think I said all these beautiful things about you, and I also want to let you talk a little bit about yourself before we get into the actual topic. But yeah, so how is your heart today?
Okay, I'm glad that you started back with which question I should answer first out of that list. My heart feels really good today. It feels full. I mean, I'm on day 4 of having you here with me, so how else could I feel, really? It feels really full. It feels very grounded, if a heart can feel grounded, if that makes sense, and calm and really open, I would say. That's how I would describe it.
Okay, nice. I feel the same too, to be honest. I think I'm really grateful to be here with you right now. And I'm glad that me being here makes you feel full. So, yeah, nice. Anyway, do we want, to be honest, when I want to say, I want us to talk about how we met. I don't know where to start, or I don't know what to share and what not to share. Mm-hmm. But I would say it feels like we've known each other forever. That's the one thing. We met in Halifax, of course, and through Anne Bay. And yeah, shout out to this wonderful woman as well. And yeah, I think, should I let you talk first?
I mean, it's your show. I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I can talk about that, and then I can talk about myself, and then I can talk about anything else that you like. But no, really. I think, we were both signed up for a year-long course with Anne, and it involved an in-person 5 days to start, and we both like to be fiscally responsible, so we were looking for a roommate, and we didn't know anybody else in the group, and we let Anne know that we were both looking for roommates, and she paired us up, or introduced us. I guess she didn't pair us up. She introduced us, and we texted and just agreed to stay together, and then I was going to pick you up at the airport, and never met you, never saw you, never even talked to you outside of text. Anyway, picked you up at the airport, and I remember as soon as I saw you, we had a big hug and threw your stuff in the car, and then we started talking, and I don't think we've stopped since. And that was a little over 3 years ago now. Yes. And I can't remember. It's funny, it's only been that long, and yet it feels like yesterday, and I really can't remember a time that that you weren't in my life, that I didn't know you. That time doesn't exist to me. I don't know. So
and I think what I shared with you as well when we met, I was a bit apprehensive because we never met each other before. So I was like, okay, I don't know who I'm meeting. I'm going to trust that she's a wonderful person. And anyway, and I think the first hug that we had, the way you hugged me, and I think I shared that afterward, the way you hugged me when you picked me up. First of all, you picking me up at the airport, it's just thank you for that. You didn't have to, but you did.
And I kind of did have to, because I'm not sure how you would have got to where we were going. Well, we have great transportation options here.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I could have figured out someone else could have said, okay, she can figure that out herself. But you came to pick me up. So that's at least to me, that's a big deal, right? And then we hugged. It was a beautiful hug. And at that point, I think I softened, I relaxed when we hugged, and you had such a big smile. I was like, okay, I feel welcomed by your presence. So I felt, at ease enough. We drove, and then I remember that first night we spoke until early in the morning. We just, like you said, we started talking in the car, and then everything you were showing was like, me too. And then it was kind of like that back and forth of me too. And then that first night, we just talked nonstop until early in the morning, I think.
Yes, that's what I remember too.
Yeah. And then I think, like you said, I agree. I don't feel like it's only been 3 years. It feels like it's definitely been way longer than that. So yeah, I'm just grateful that we met. Yeah, I think now maybe sharing a little bit about yourself.
Sure. And if anybody hears any clickety clacking in the background, that would be the fur baby that Olivia was referring to earlier. And her name's Gertie. Just in case you hear anything, I think she's settled down now, but she wanted to be part of it too. And since we won't let her bark, that's her way of getting in here.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, about me. What's relevant? So I'm a really big feeler. I have a lot of feelings, and I feel them pretty deeply, whatever they are. The good feelings, the bad feelings. Not that there's bad feelings. The easy ones, the ones that are a little more challenging. All of them. I feel them all deeply. It's really important to me to be authentic in every place that I am, whether that's work, personal lives, with family, whatever it is. It's really important to me that I am who I am in all environments. And I think sometimes people find that a bit surprising in a professional setting. Not that I'm unprofessional. However, I think there's some things about that. And then even with my friends, like, it's fun. I love to be able to just talk about all of the things, no matter what they are. And sometimes people are a little surprised by that, and then we have some good laughs. It's important to me, though, and I think if you show up, I believe anyway, authentically and open, because I'm pretty open, and not a lot surprises me that people say. I feel like that helps to make people more comfortable to be open, and kind of like you and I have been talking a lot in the last few days around how passionate I'm feeling about people being able to talk about whatever it is that they want with each other. And if something that's being said or shared is uncomfortable to someone or hurtful, that other people can share that it's uncomfortable or hurtful to them. And that people, I just wish humans could all do that, no matter what the situation was, And I didn't think I would find myself talking about this right here. I just think it's something that we've been talking a lot about that's really important to me. And I think it's a big part of who I am and how I try to show up in the world. I'm not perfect at that, that's for sure. I also really love learning more about myself, why I am the way I am, how I move through the world, and the different things that impact me, and what I can do to really try to live my life for myself. Is that what I'm saying? As fully as I can. And working a lot on presence, and I've had lots of opportunities to practice that in this calendar year so far. So that, that's the interesting stuff about me, I think. And I love to laugh. I love to laugh and have fun. I also love to dance. I love to lip sync, and I'm pretty good at it, as you saw today. I love time with my little tiny family of my fur baby and husband and friends too. Those are things that I really love. And of course, traveling and pizza, but everybody loves that.
Yeah, a lot of the things that you actually shared, I think that's what brought us together, presence. And, I would say you were definitely more fun than me. I think I can be a pretty serious person, but you bring that into my life, and I can relax, I can laugh, I can, and I agree. You're a pretty good lip syncer. I saw that today. And it's always fun to just record you do stuff that are just funny to me, and I can watch it again back when I'm by myself and laugh about it and share it with you and maybe with other people, especially on the day of your birthday.
Collecting.
I know. I'm collecting evidence so I can show how. Anyway, I'm not
Speaking of authenticity.
Exactly. I love that about you. I think you were pretty authentic when we met. Like, there was no hiding when we needed to cry, to laugh. Like, everything felt like full presence with you. And even talking about being a deep feeler, I think that's one of the reasons why we also connected so much. Because we were able to, even I think on that first day we met, I think we were sharing stuff first or second day, because we were also here for a retreat, right? And I think as we were processing stuff or talking about things that were happening at that retreat, I think there was a lot of crying that was happening, but we were not afraid. I think you were one of the first people that I could allow myself to cry without feeling shame, any kind of shame, because before when I would cry, I'll close my eyes or hide my face. But with you, we could sit together and cry together, or you could talk and cry and I listen. I could cry, you listen. And it felt like I could just be myself in that moment. And I think that's how we connected as well, both of us being such deep feelers, and talking about crying too, I know we cry in beautiful moments, but we also cry in moments of grief. And I think grief is one of the things that should I say we bonded over? I don't know if bonded over I don't know if bonded over is the right word, but I think
connected.
Connected. Thank you. Connected. I think we're pretty comfortable with each other in expressing that, right? And
there is I can't actually think. Sorry to interrupt you.
No,
just talking about comfort with each other and expressing stuff. There's nothing that I can think about, especially given some of our conversations in the past few days. I mean, always, that I can think about that we can't just openly and honestly speak about. Like, I don't know what that would be.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you. And since we're here to also talk about grief, as a part 2 of my episode last time, I wanted to ask you the following question. So, what is your previous and current relationship to grief?
It's been a long and bumpy road. My previous relationship to grief versus my current one is like, definitely they are different relationships. It feels like 2 totally different things. So I would say for a long time, I don't know if I ever really felt grief. It's not that it didn't exist in me somewhere. I think it was masked with some anger, some dissociation, that kind of thing. Like I think it was there, but I don't think it was really at the surface or in my kind of awareness. And I think I did a lot of things to avoid feeling the grief that's been there for many different reasons, that's collected over the course of my life, really up until I'd say maybe my mid-30s. I didn't feel, I'd be sad at a breakup or somebody would pass and, that's different though. That's different. Like the typical things. And I think I just didn't engage with it. I didn't really express it. For a long time, I didn't even really cry. Like I just didn't do that. Then everything changed. And I would say one of the biggest turning points for me in my relationship with grief was maybe about a decade ago, I'd say. Like a decade ago, almost exactly, actually. I started experiencing anxiety for the first time in my life, like as a conscious experience. And again, I think it was also there for a while and just sort of covered up with some other addictions and distractions and things. And then panic attacks came along with that too. And I really, that's a scary thing when you start experiencing that. And lots of stuff came with that. And then grief started kind of showing up around that time. And I remember feeling like, I don't know a word better than like this profound sadness. And I was like, what is this about? Nothing just happened, because you know how that happens, right? When you start experiencing sadness or grief, you're like, well, you try to connect it with a behavior or an action or something immediate, and it's not, right? It's not always about that. And I just felt all of this sadness along with that. And I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm going to drown in this. Like, how am I going to live my life feeling all of this? Like it was like too much, too much stuff to feel. And that's when I would say it changed. And then I started really getting into some like yoga, meditation. I had a tapping coach for a while. I started therapy like pretty intensely. I had a couple different therapists, a couple different types of therapies that I did. I started reading about stuff. And then I started doing some inner work, met some different teachers and coaches that I had to support kind of digging into what's already in there and bringing it up to kind of process and move through. And I think for a long time, it felt like anger was what was there. Even then, I wasn't comfortable with that. And then grief too. And I would say really in the past year, things have changed with grief. Especially in the past 6 months or so, there's been lots of things happen in my personal life, and that on top of a pretty full professional career, I had no choice really but to feel the things as they were feeling, because my cup was already so full, and not all with great stuff. There was just not a lot of room there. And so as things came, I got really worried initially, thinking, am I going to be able to handle this? Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go back to 10 years ago when I was panicking all the time, having a hard time leaving my house? Like, can I do this? And I wasn't sure that I could. And it seemed the only way I could was that if I actually felt grief, sadness, whatever the emotions were as they came, and took the moment or few moments, because oftentimes it only takes me a few months to process whatever the thing is I'm feeling in that moment. Not saying that makes it better or completely go away. And I think I really learned a lot about like presence. It's always been important to me to work on that. I ebb and flow with how good I am at it. And I think I'm a lot more present with grief now. I'm a lot more comfortable with it. I trust myself to be able to handle it. It's a feeling, it's an emotion, and to make sure that I allow myself the space and time to feel it. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Kind of when me and my tangents. I kind of went on one of those.
No, it's good.
It was flowing.
It's fine. Like I picked up a few things from everything that you were saying, and I think you mentioned anger quite a few times, and then relating to grief, and I think that was I want to maybe piggyback a little bit on that and ask, what surprised you most about grief? Because I don't think we associate anger with grief a lot. And I think it happens sometimes. At least in my own life, I can remember the few times when I was angry about something and I just started crying and I burst into tears, and I realized that I'm actually really sad, and maybe it's something that was there, like I was feeling for a very long time, that I wasn't allowing myself to feel. But I don't know where the anger was necessarily coming from. Was it from the event that happened, or was it from not allowing myself to feel in the moment when that particular event happened? So I'm very curious about, as you mentioned anger, you mentioned as well a bit of sadness, but I think we associate more sadness with grief most of the time. But I don't think we talk a lot about, the anger that comes sometimes, or which is underneath the grief. And I'm just curious, now that you talked about what your previous relationship looked like and the current, like how does it feel right now? What surprised you most about grief?
A lot of things. I think it surprised me how it can hide. And I don't know if it's so much that it's hiding, or if it's a lack of willingness to maybe go there, because grief can be really hard to feel. It can be really intense. And, I think a couple things. So I think I was surprised that sometimes anger is a bit of a shield to hide the grief that's there. And I love what you said. It's exactly what you said. For me anyway, sometimes I would just get so mad at something, and in hindsight, or when I go back to be like, what was that really about? It was grief. It was something that I felt sad about or disappointed about, or that I felt I wished was different, and it was really about grief more so than anger. And I think a lot of times anger almost feels safer to express than grief in a way, or almost has, like, for me, I guess I feel like I don't express anger very often, and anytime I do or have, it's like an automatic release of energy in a way, whereas feeling grief doesn't necessarily make it go away. It can, but like grief and sadness are a little bit different too. Grief can be underlying, anyway. I think there's that, and I think the other thing is how much beauty can be present simultaneously with grief. And by that I mean, again, just with some recent experience, noticing that beautiful things, good things can still happen even during periods of grief. And a lot of times I want grief to go away. I want sadness to go away. I don't want to feel bad. I want to feel better, and what's interesting that I've realized about that is, when a few months ago, one of our dogs was diagnosed with terminal cancer, and we knew we had a certain, amount of time left. It was wild because we were grieving these couple months that we had. Mm-hmm. And yet there was also so many beautiful moments in that. And had I done what I often did, of wishing the time to pass till when I no longer felt grief, I would have missed all those beautiful moments too. So, it might seem so obvious. And to me, it feels like new information that beautiful, happy thing can happen at the same time as grief. That idea of two things can be true. And if we allow ourselves to be present with the grief, we can also allow ourselves to be present with all those other things that happen instead of missing them. And I think the other part is that, I forget what I was going to say. I had another part about the thing that surprised me most about grief, but then I got on this tangent and I kind of forget what it was. Maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, those were kind of two,
and if it comes back to you, please feel free to share. But I think, again, I'm listening to what you are sharing, and you express, you're talking about presence and expression, and you talked about how you express anger sometimes and how you express sadness or grief. And I'm just curious if you are aware of how grief moves through your body. What does your grief feels like physically that will give you a hint that maybe that's grief instead of anger or sadness, etc. Other kind of emotions, because in my previous episode I said love is grief and grief is love, and sometimes they can coexist at the same time. Like you said, you have beautiful things while you may also be going through a difficult moment, and if you pay attention enough, you might be able to see it. So what are those hints, or what does your grief feels like physically that makes you understand, okay, now it's time to express it and move through it?
So I think for me, if I was going to say how grief feels for me, it feels like a real weight. And I feel like it lives in a space sort of between the bottom of my throat and into kind of through my chest to my solar plexus, almost like in a column there of like heaviness. And that's sort of where I feel it. And when I feel that, I know that's what that is for me. That's how it feels for me. And I think, again, just one of my intentions for this year was to be where my feet are, to be more present. And I feel like life has brought me lots of opportunities in this calendar year to practice presence. And so I think because of that, and I've been working on that a lot and being more in my body, less just in my head, more in my body over the last couple of years, for sure. Some of that work's paying off, and I can recognize that, and I just do what I need to do when I feel that. And sometimes it is cry. Sometimes it is just spend a little bit of time alone. Sometimes it's deep breaths. It depends on where I am and when it is, and I think I try my best just to make the space for whatever it is that I need to do in that time that I have that feeling. But that feeling is really the thing that I would connect to say, oh yeah, there it is. Hello. Was that the full question?
Yeah. No. No, you did. I can relate to that, definitely. I think I can feel it deep in my chest. Like sometimes when I'm not feeling well and I notice something feeling very heavy that needs to be released, right? And I know these moments, sometimes we'll call each other and we're talking, and it's so beautiful how that happens sometimes. You don't even know, I feel safe enough with you or in our relationship that I can call you and my body feels like, oh no, we're fine, we're okay. And then as I start talking to you and I start relating what happens, and I just start crying, and then I can feel it in my chest, right? Sometimes I can also feel it in the back of my, in my back. So I can definitely relate with that feeling of heaviness in the body where as soon as you start crying, then there's some kind of relief for sure. And I think you probably touched on that already in terms of you used to feel overwhelmed by grief and maybe not allowing yourself to feel it or express it. Do you feel like right now you handle it better, or you can you handle it, or other people around you cannot handle it? Like how do you feel? Sorry, I'm laughing because we've had that conversation privately earlier, so I'm just trying to how does it, like, the overwhelm that you feel with grief right now, how does it feel in your body?
Yeah, I like this question. So what I would say is, for me, I would circle back briefly just about what I said initially around my previous versus current relationship with grief, and how previously I would feel overwhelmed and like I couldn't handle it, and kind of like it would swallow me whole, and how would I live, and I'm going to feel like this forever. And now I know I'm not going to feel like this forever. Grief will pass and it might come and go, and I know I can handle it. I know I have tools to pay attention and support myself or get support that I need. But it is interesting, that part about other people. And what I would say is sometimes I think my grief makes the people really close to me, some of them, really uncomfortable. And I think it's almost shifted to where, maybe sometimes that some of the people really close to me, not many, but I think it can happen, feel way more uncomfortable with my grief than I am with my grief.
Yeah.
And I suspect I've set that up myself by sort of being hyper independent as a trauma response, and just handling everything myself, to now, and maybe keeping things in and stuffing them all down into wherever that space was that seems to not really be there anymore, to now expressing it a lot more openly and freely. And that does make some people uncomfortable, I think. And I'm not sure that they necessarily know what to do with that, especially if it's people who have known me for a long time, or in a different way. I think it's interesting to just even notice that, I think. So I'm grateful that I have the tools and supports that I do have, so that doesn't sort of throw me off either. I mean, that's okay. That's their experience, and that's about them and not me, right? And I've learned enough now to understand that. So I think that helps, the fact that I know that now too.
Yeah, and would you say that the fact that you feel like you are more present with yourself right now and present in your body also helps with the way you handle grief?
Yes, because I think now that I am so much more in my body and a lot more present again, sometimes I'm out and I dissociate and the presence train is left the station and we are not there. However, there's a lot more time that I am in my body, and there is a lot more time that I am present. And I'm very attuned to what's happening. And I really am doing this fun thing that, my therapist and I started practicing quite a lot a few years ago, just with easy, simple things about being in my body. And so, we started with, that's kind of how I got here, I think, but it just started a few years ago with, okay, if somebody asks you, do you want to go have a coffee? I would often feel bad saying no or whatever. I would just sort of get into my body for a minute, and I can feel in my body if it's a yes or no. And so just going with that as my answer and not worrying about it further than that. And little things, right? Simple things. And then it got to deeper things. And now my body is like such a guide. It knows what it wants and what it doesn't want. And it feels like this really cool secret relationship that I have with myself. It's really intimate and it's really deep. And I think I love it. And it's cool. And I'm still working on it. We're still working on our relationship here. But it's kind of neat. Like, it tells me. And if I trust it, even when sometimes I'm like, my body's saying something different than my head. When I trust my body and I go with that, things usually turn out way better. So yes, in answer to your question, my circular way of saying yes.
No, that was actually beautiful. I think it was beautiful the way you talk about your relationship with your body, for sure. That's very inspiring. And I've been lucky enough to also witness you into, that growing relationship with your body and how it shows up, and how even when we have conversation, you show up with your intuitive body so beautifully with some of the questions that I have. Oh, I can be in my head too. I think we can. We are both.
We share that skill.
I mean, we are both the same in that same way. And like I said at the beginning, there's that way that you and I can talk for a moment, and then you ask the right questions. And I know it comes deep from within, your body, where you are, you are present enough with what I'm saying and with your own self that you can detach from what I'm saying and hear it in such a perspective that you can ask the right questions that make me wonder, like, okay. And we are very subtle about it, but we're also very honest. And I think that's what I appreciate. We can be honest about, okay, can I ask you this? Do you, or maybe do you want to explore this deeper in this way or in that way? And I can appreciate when I feel it's coming from the depths of you knowing where you want me to actually question what I was just sharing earlier. So I can attest to that. I can say, yeah, I was a witness to that in many instances where I could see you being connected to your body and coming from that place to make those important decisions, right?
Yeah, and I think I would say you have been actually. Basically, we met when I started like this different relationship with my body. So you have been around for all of it. And what's been really cool is that you've allowed me the space and the grace to explore that a little bit within myself. And how many times I think, as you're saying, like we're asking each other questions, and sometimes we're subtle and sometimes we're not, me, I'm not. You're better at that. You're better at asking permission. But one of the things I just thought about as you're saying that is like, it's so funny because I think about the times when I'm like, I'm not even sure where that question came from. And I'll just be like, I'm not sure why I'm saying this or where this is coming from. And I'm not saying I'm even channeling or anything, but I think I like how you described that, like you see it as I'm just so present with you and I'm just in my body that like, it's I sort of not that I'm detached from some presence, but it comes from somewhere deep, and it just sort of makes sense.
Yeah,
like it
does.
And you've let me play around and practice with that a lot. So thank you for that, because it's been fun to see what happens there.
Yeah, it's true, and I think it makes sense. I think that's the most important thing. Sometimes you don't know where it's coming from, but it makes sense, and we help each other in that way. So I'm grateful for that too.
It's not always logical when it comes from there, right? Like,
no,
we're smart women. We're well educated, so we use our brains a lot. Yeah. And sometimes this stuff just doesn't come from there.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Because sometimes we get stuck in there too. At least I do, right?
Oh, yeah. We do.
And you go, that spiral, you don't. No. Sometimes you don't always need your head. You also need your body to lead the way. And I think it speaks a little bit, maybe one of my last questions, I think, because we've been having such a beautiful conversation. I don't want to stop, but as you were talking earlier, you talked about tools and rituals, and I think you mentioned a few already, but if you can maybe expand a little bit on that, and maybe one thing or two things, I don't know. I don't want to limit you. If you want to mention three things as well,
you should probably limit me. You know what happens when I don't have limits, I'm talking.
No, but I'm very curious to hear a little bit more, because I heard you mention breathing, yoga, I think meditation. I don't know if you mentioned, but anyway, maybe I'm saying something because I've seen it before. But anyway, you mentioned tools definitely with your therapist, and I think that was a beautiful example as well on how you can move through grief. And I talked about that in my previous episode. I think sometimes we can feel the grief, but we don't necessarily know how to express or how to mourn, how to truly mourn and allow ourselves. Because we don't always necessarily grieve when we lose someone. But in your case, that's what happened. And I think it it gave you the opportunity to develop a new relationship with grief, especially this year or the past few months that you've been going through all those experiences. And again, I know they've been difficult at times and it's been a roller coaster, but you've managed to find ways to mourn and move through your grief. And I was lucky enough, again, like I always say, to witness part of it. And that's why I want to maybe dig a little bit right now, and I don't know if those tools or rituals might be beneficial to someone else out there. But I talked about that too. If we can allow ourselves to think about those rituals or tools or anything that can be beneficial to how we can truly allow ourselves to mourn old versions of us or life experiences, and what has been most supportive to you in expressing your grief, especially after losing Benjo, for example?
I think quite a few things. I do a lot of different things now. So, I mean, breathing for me has become such a game changer. Just some deep, slow breathing that helps me so much. It helps me move the energy through my body. It helps when I'm crying a lot to try to like calm myself a little, not to stop myself from crying, but just to be able to breathe intentionally is helpful. I think therapy has been really, really, really big. I think also asking for what I need. So like if I need support, if I need somebody to be with me for something, if I need to just have a conversation, if I just need somebody to listen, whatever it is. And you know, I think about just a conversation I had with you when all of this stuff happened, and I just talked to you. I just cried and I talked, and you didn't really say anything, and you were just there. That was it. Like, just presence of people that I trust and love is big. Breathing is big. Meditation can be really helpful for me too. Therapy, as I've mentioned. And you know, I love crystals and oracle cards as well. I mean, I don't know if that's for this podcast or not, but I just love all of that stuff. And, you know, talking about it. Like, I shared a lot of stuff on social media too. Not because I was looking for attention or whatever. It just felt really good to share what I was feeling, to share my grief, to share what the experience was like. And it wasn't for anything. So it was just to share it. So like for me, expressing it, whether it's talking or writing, I guess in that way, or just sharing it with people, just having it witnessed. And I don't need anybody to do anything. I don't need somebody to fix it. I don't need somebody to tell me what to do. I just need sharing. For me is really helpful. And I do that in a lot of different ways, I think. So, and moving my body. Like, whether it's walking or working out or whatever. I know you said 1 or 2 things, maybe 3. And I think that was 10. I just have a lot of things that I do. Like, all of these things are important to me and support me. And, you know, like massage is real self-care for me too. And that I feel like that helps me move some things and some energy healing. I've got some of that. Anyway, I'm going to stop my list. You get the idea. The toolbox is big. She needs a lot of support.
Don't we all? I think we all do. I also have a big toolbox, and then I can pick up what I need for the occasion. And I wanted to end this conversation emphasizing the witnessing part. And you mentioned that too. And something I advocate a lot for, being witness sometimes by ourselves when we're going through grief, or like when we need to mourn, or being witnessed by others. And even the fact that I can call you and you can call me and then I can just cry. Sometimes it's just like, you don't have to say anything. I just need to cry. That is such a beautiful thing, to be able to do that with someone else. And I think being able to be witnessed, and I think that's one of the things we did with Anbury Bay too, like sitting there and having someone putting the hands on your feet or on your back and then being like, no, open your eyes and cry, and I see you, I love you, no matter what. But the I see you part is so, so, so important. And I think witnessing is such a big part of being able to express grief, especially when you do it outwardly too. Like you said, you don't necessarily do it because you want people to say something about it, but you allow yourself to express it outwardly the best way you feel like it's gonna make you maybe not forget about it, but move past it, because you still have to live a life beyond the grief, right? And even when you lose someone, you still have to love. You have to keep loving. It's a reminder that you love the person. They've maybe not physically here with you anymore, but expressing your grief is like, okay, it's expressing a part of you that you used to love someone who's not there anymore.
That's the part that I was going to say earlier. That part 3, remember, I was like, I can't remember is that grief. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, grief is an expression of love, of this. For me, a lot of times grief, it's not always about love. However, when I'm talking about loss or death or something, like grief is really there because I had a lot of love or care. Or, yeah.
Okay. No, I thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having that conversation with me, honestly. And thank you for joining me. Thank you for being my first guest here. Is there anything you want to add before maybe we end the conversation today?
Oh, why do you leave it so open for me? That is so dangerous. Shall I lip sync? Too bad there wasn't video, or I'd leave you all with a special treat. No, honestly. Okay, I'll be serious now. Why do I do that? Hide my discomfort. Although I'm not uncomfortable right now. No. So I think I'm just being funny.
It's just being you.
I'm very funny.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, I'm done. Honestly, I'm honored that I was your first podcast guest. I think it's also probably a good thing, given I'm sure your guests will get better and better. Oh, the caliber. Maybe they'll stay a little more on topic. I'm just kidding. I am honored to be your first guest, and I always love having conversations like this with you, and this just felt like a conversation that we would have, and we have had parts of this type of conversation before. It was kind of cool to put it all together. And yeah, just another opportunity. I've appreciated the questions that you've asked, because the opportunity to think of this in this way has been pretty cool too. So thank you. And I love you.
Oh, I love you. Oh, I love you too. But maybe the very last question I want to ask, and again, it can be a short one or a long one. Don't worry about it. Before you go, right? You're my first guest. So I feel like, because it's called the Liberated Self Podcast, why not ask you that question? And you may decline to reply to it. It's really up to you. But I was I'm curious to know, what does the most liberated version of you look like?
Oh. I'm resisting the temptation to answer that with a funny joke. So, honestly, though, I think when I think about that, like what the most liberated version of me looks like, I think it's when I'm like showing up authentically in any situation, and when I feel like that's received, is even more liberating. But just, I think, as I continue to grow in my comfort of being who I am, like authentically in all moments, in all situations, is really liberating. And, I'm continuing to grow in that, to show up fully as who I am in my professional life, in my personal life, in romantic way, whatever that is. And it's so liberating to just fully show up and be who I am, and trust that that's enough, better than enough, and I think that's where I'm at with that right now. Like, those are the times when I feel most liberated, I think.
Thank you. And again, thank you for being your most authentic self with me all the time. I appreciate you, and I appreciate who you are moments to moments. And it was such an honor and pleasure to have you here with me. Like, I'm smiling so much I can't stop. But I'm really happy we did that together, and I appreciate you so much. And I think you know that. You know how much I love you. Basically, thank you for walking life with me. I couldn't have imagined a better person to walk this life with me, with all the other beautiful people that I have in my life. But I hope we get to do this again someday. But thank you for being here today, Victoria. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, that's all for today, guys. Thank you for hanging out with us. And before I part ways with you, As always, I would like to express my deepest gratitude for your presence, your open heart, and your listening ear. Medai Munase, again, which means thank you in my mother tongue. Until next time, all my love.